Hi guys, it's just another quick tournament review for Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game tournament I went to recently. Nightmares in the North, which was hosted at Brum, and it's 650 points. So yeah, let's get to it.
So I always try and make the tournaments at Brum if I can, just because it's really good atmosphere, and I think they're quite well supported by the local scene. So you see a lot of the same players, which is quite cool because they're quite a nice bunch. Plus Birmingham isn't too far for me. So turning to my list, I was sort of struggling to think what to take, and I haven't taken Riders of Theoden in a singles tournament before, so I thought it might be quite interesting. I did agonise over what to take. I started off with Theoden, Gamling, Dernhelm, and then lots of Riders and Royal Guard. And then I thought it might be cool to get Aemir in there. Then I got persuaded Daewine might be a better option, just because of the synergy with Theoden. And that's what I decided on in the end. So the list I decided on was Theoden with 2 riders, 5 Royal Guard, Gamling with Flag, 3 riders, 1 with Throwing Spear, and then 2 Royal Guard, and then Dernhelm on her own, which I sort of like as a single model warband drop occasionally, just to sort of mess with the opponent a bit. Unless you're a Maelstrom, then it's a bit annoying. And then just Daewine with 2 riders and then 3 Royal Guard. So it's 22 models, which is fairly respectable for an all cavalry and hero heavy force, I think. So game 1, I was paired up against Mr. Sunny Hunter of Middle-earth and Mercia fame. So he brought Farharad and Serpent Horde Green Alliance, with Suladan leading the Haradrim, and then Mahud King leading a few camels and half trolls and whatnot. So this was another veto tournament, but rather than vetoing pools, we vetoed a range of scenarios across the pools. So I think Sonny vetoed assassination, just because I think my number of heroes and were a bit terrifying, and also his assassin and target had to be the Mahud King, which is a bit limiting. So that sort of made sense. And then I vetoed domination, which I think also made sense, just because he was quite bow and infantry heavy, and I didn't want to be limited to trying to sort of fight around a specific point on the battlefield if I could help it. So we settled on commands of the battlefield, which is a Maelstrom deployment, which I didn't mind too much either. And he had a few camels and a bit of cav, but I thought overall it wasn't a bad result for me at all. But unfortunately, I won priority, which is always really annoying at Maelstrom. Um, but I managed to keep all my dudes together in one corner, which I thought would be helpful, just because I didn't want him then being able to come on and surround a single warband, and then just kill it basically. Or I don't know if camels can come on an impact hit, but that's what I was nervous about as well. But also, obviously, he had a lot of bows. But in the end, he brought his guys on, basically boxing me into that corner. So my plan was basically just to charge all my guys at one half of his force, kill it, and then spread out and take control of the battlefield. It sort of went to plan in that I ended up fighting his Farharad for almost the whole game, and his Haradrim didn't actually really get involved at all. It didn't go to plan in the half trolls are scary, and I bounced off them quite a lot. I don't think there's too much to say really. He managed to get behind a barrier, which I completely underestimated the value of. I got around it, and there was a bit of carnage on both sides. I don't think either of us broke in the end, and we went to time, and I think basically he'd been able to spread out on the board whilst I'd sort of gotten bogged down in this fight with half trolls. So I think in the end the score was 5-2 to Sunny, because I think I had one corner to myself. He had 2 to himself, and then 1 contested. Nobody broke or got leader wounds. So that was pretty much, that was down to me. I played that badly. I think in retrospect, what I should have done was gone for the squishy Serpent Horde half, but I was sort of worried about camels coming up behind me and Yeah, but I think it probably would have been a bit better trying to do the squishy stuff. But that was okay. It was a really fun game. I really enjoyed it. So game two, I was playing Lee Crosby, who brought his Rivendell. So he had Gilgalad on foot with a bunch of Kingsguard. I think he had a lot of swordsmen, a few spear and shields, and then 4 or 5 archers. And then Elrond and the rest all both as single warband drops, although Elrond was on a horse. I can't remember what we vetoed. I think he vetoed Clash by Moonlight just because of the +1 to throwing weapons, which makes sense. And then I vetoed Lords of Battle because because I think Gilgalad just tearing through my ranks is just not the one. So in the end, we settled on Hold Ground. So I won priority again. So Theoden and Gamlen came on together in one corner. And I sort of had to try and deploy them so that if all the elves came up behind me, it wouldn't be a disaster. But then Dernhelm came in on her own, just in the opposite corner, and then Daelwyn came in with a few buddies again in another corner. So I was quite spread out. He brought Gilgalad on sort of near Daelwyn, but sort of away from my main force, and sort of just made his way towards the middle, but getting shots off for the duration. So Elrond came on and cast Wrath of Bruinen. I'm going to struggle to say that. But fortunately, it only dismounted 3 of my guardsmen. Didn't kill any of them, but cost a will and 2 might, which is quite lucky for me. But the next turn, I think I either won priority or called a heroic. I can't remember, because I basically wanted to pin Elrond down before he just ran in between all my cavalry and cast it again, and then I'd just cry. So I think, so I got in there with just Theoden, because he was the only one who could reach because of the 3 dismounted guard. I took a massive gamble, but I thought he'd struggle to kill me in 1 turn because it's still 6s with Theoden's defense 7, even though he's 2 wounds, 1 fate. But I think I had either 2 or 3 might on him, so it wasn't too bad. Because I also had to strike up, of course. I can't remember who won the striker, but I remember I've completely fluffed my combat dice, and then he rolled 2 6s. But luckily I fated it, so Theoden was alive for the next turn, but unhappy. But I think he had to burn his might to strike up. And then the story for that part of the board is basically Gambling and Theoden kept calling a heroic move and then striking up to kill Elrond with a few buddies after sort of 3 or so turns. So obviously I killed an expensive model, but it kept a lot of my guys away from his main force. And then with his main force, I basically sort of spent a couple of turns shooting and throwing stuff at it, and killed a few guys. And I think he might have shot one of my guys or a couple of my guys. And then in the end, I basically charged in to try and get between him and the central objective. So sort of even if he killed all my cavalry, I'd still hold the objective and win that way. I think in the end, I basically just eventually wore him down. I think I lost quite a lot of numbers, but I was able to hold the central objective. I think I was not quite broken, so that one ended 11-1. I think the only thing I missed out on was I didn't kill Gilgalad. I think he only took 1 wound, and that was from Dernhelm just throwing a spear at him. And I think, it was a very lucky shot, because I think it was a 4 or 5 to hit, and then a 6 followed by a 4 to wound, and then I think he must have rolled like a 1 or 2 on the fate, and then obviously didn't want to spend all the might to get it back up. But other than that, Gilgalad, I don't think he fluffed a combat, and he killed Daelwyn, and he just sort of killed a couple of guys every turn, and that was scary. But luckily I was able to deal with the elves, cause even if they're fight 6, obviously a lot of the time it just sort of comes down to dice, and I think if you sort of win with Rohan on the charge, get a knockdown bonus, that's pretty terrifying. So that one finished 11-1. So going into game 3, I ended up having to play a mirror match, which is a bit surprising because I think there was 3 Rise of Theoden players out of 40, and then another couple of people playing Rohan. So I think our lists were pretty similar. He had a few more guys. I had Deowine, and Dernhelm, and he had Aemir. So he had one hero less and a few more guys. I honestly can't remember what scenarios we vetoed, but what we ended up playing was capture and control. There's not too much to say about this game. I sort of tried to kind of get the edge by sort of trying to play a bit smart to begin with, but it basically, we said at the beginning, it just sort of comes down to dice really, because obviously it's whoever gets the roll off to get the charge in, because obviously you're not getting cavalry bonuses, but if you charge with Rohan, you get +1 strength and +1 fight on the warriors anyway, and I mean it didn't really make much difference, to be honest, but so I think I managed to dehorse his Theoden, and I think my Theoden was relatively unscathed. In fact, I think all my heroes were unscathed, but I lost a lot of warriors, and I think his heroes were all okay, but I think I did do a bit of damage to Theoden. But yeah, we kind of just bounced off each other the whole time, and I did sort of go in thinking that I'd rather not be playing a mirror match, but actually, I had a really nice game, and my opponent, who was Brian Trubshaw, it was really nice, and we had a really pleasant game. And in the end, I lost 7-6, so it was nice and close. But yeah, that's the way it goes. But as far as mirror matches go, it was a really good one. So yeah, I enjoyed that one. So in my last game, I played another one of the Middle Earth and Mercia lot. So I think I played 2 out of 3. So I played Tom Payne, who brought his Last Alliance, which is, I think the theme is sort of loosely sort of Gladden Fields sort of time when the Isildur has the ring. So Isildur's the leader with the ring, and he's got a bunch of Númenóreans with him. And then he's got an elf captain on horse with a few sort of dudes on foot and a banner. And then he's got Círdan with, I think it's about 5 Rivendell Knights. So one of them has a banner, I think. So yeah, pretty nasty. I can't remember what we vetoed, to be totally honest. But I do know what we ended up playing, because it's one with quite an interesting deployment, divide and conquer, which is where you sort of deploy in opposite corners, and then there's 3 objectives across the centre of the board that you're sort of looking to hold. So I basically did exactly the same thing as I did at the last tournament when I played this, which is try and use my mobility to gang up on one half of his army and just destroy it, and then sort of worry about winning after that. So I thought this worked quite well actually, because Isildur and Círdan were on one part of the board, and the elf captain with all his buddies were on the other side of the board, and I thought that's just got to be steamrolled, hasn't it? But exactly the opposite happened. He basically hunkered down in a sort of little passageway, protected by the board edge and then some rocks, so I could only get 2 or 3 riders in either side, and I basically spent the whole game bouncing off, and I think he killed quite a few of my riders actually. So that wasn't great for me, but what was great for me is I managed to, after copping a few sort of elf bow hits, I managed to line up for the charge and then just sort of get stuck into Isildur and the knights, and then some of the Númenóreans, and I think basically I think I basically just sort of killed stuff and sort of slowly broke through, and I managed to get to Círdan and polish him off with a striking Theoden. And then whilst this was happening, Isildur basically combated straight through my lines and smelt victory and just sort of chopping up lots of helpless riders of Rohan. But I managed to combat with Gamling and strike with Deowine in the same combat. So when that went off, Gamling ran after a Rivendell Knight, and striking Deowine went into Isildur, and I think I sort of trapped him, and after a couple of turns I managed to polish him off before he could get that pesky ring on. So yeah, it was kind of it was a bit of a mixed bag. So I sort of lost on one side, but fortunately it was away from the objective, and I was doing well on the other side. I managed to kill the Sealder and Kurdan, so um, we ended up going to time. But yeah, it might have been interesting to see what happened if the game carried on, because obviously I kind of think on the one hand I would have been able to sort of sweep up the rest of the Numenorians, but then on the other hand, he had this like hit squad that was absolutely rinsing me, and it was heading towards the centre of the board. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame that we went to time, but it was yeah, a great game. And that one was 6-2 to me because I think I held the central objective and I'd killed his leader and broken him. I think something like that. And I think he had one side objective uncontested, and um, yeah, I think that was it actually. Yeah, so yeah, 6-2. So yeah, I ended up with 2 wins and 2 losses. So I was hoping to come around mid-table, but I ended up coming 24th out of 40th. I thought I'd do a bit better than that, just because my wins were, pretty big, and my losses. Well, actually, no, one of my wins was pretty big. One of my wins was sort of medium, and then I think my 2 losses were fairly close. So I was sort of hoping to be the top of the middle lot, if you see what I mean. But I think the weighting was a bit different. I think it was based on the difficulty of player you were playing against. So that's what weighted it rather than VPs, I think. So yeah, it was a great tournament, and I look forward to the next one, hosted at Brum, and also hosted by Aaron from Web Warrior Protocol.